Welcome back to the Video Strategy Podcast. I'm Jackson Kingsley, and I'm here with Will Dorian Smith. And our mission here is to help you with scaling your video agencies by sharing our lived experiences in the field. This episode today is all about lead generation, which means how to generate qualified meetings for your business, people who are a good fit for your services. And I've been really looking forward to this episode because this is one of the most asked, most requested topics. It comes up every single day. And people are always asking me, how do I generate more leads for my video business? But the interesting thing is that the answer to it is not really what you think. There's a distinct shift. Well, in fact, there are a few shifts that we need to make if we're going to do this successfully. So I think the best place to start with this topic is where most of you are at right now, which is also where I was at, where Will was at. And that is having a business that's fully dependent on referrals. And Will, maybe you can describe, what the situation is like for most people when they're thinking, I need more leads for my video business. What's going on in that moment as you're describing it?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll take us back about a year or so before I started with you, Jackson. So I worked with you in VBM, where essentially I was focusing purely on cold outreach, essentially pitching to old clients or friends of friends or referrals. Essentially, hey, do you need a video? Or hey, let's catch up. Or hey, let's have a chat. No real direction, no real strategy. Really, just hey, do you need a video? Or hey, do you need a video guy? I promise I'm really good. This had actually worked for me up until the point that I lost my job with National Geographic, or at least when that show ended. And it took me about a year to even get that gig. So I was kind of going through feast and famine, getting along, getting by, but getting work and then the work disappearing and having to start the whole process again. And I had a loose lead gen system, which was essentially I would send out a couple of emails and hope that they would reply. But now shifting to the VBM system and the real lead gen system, now I have a list of about 100 people who I can check in month on month, week on week, even if now is the right time, have them in the list for the future, and actually have a strategy based on their needs, their goals, rather than me pitching to them. And it has been a complete 180 in my business. I've made more money than ever, better clients than ever, better projects than ever. So yes, this small change can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think the place that I remember when I was starting trying to figure out the whole lead generation piece, I was doing a bit of posting on LinkedIn. I was doing a bit of direct outreach with LinkedIn. I was trying to blast people with emails. I was also using Instagram and trying a bunch of other different tools. And at the core of all of it, what I've realized now is that it's not so much about the strategy itself. It's not so much about the tools. It's about the underlying principles and making sure that you get your positioning and messaging right first. And I just want to share a story because very recently, just this week, we closed a £54,000 deal, which is about $70,000 from direct cold outreach using the methods that we're going to be talking about here today. So, the key thing here is that it does work when done right. But the way that I was doing it before, which was very much sort of scattergun approach, I was trying all the different platforms. I was sending in, a few dozen messages here and there. I was sending 100, maybe 200 if I was feeling ambitious on the day, but I really had no system in place. And beyond all of that, I really had no underlying messaging structure. I hadn't dialed in my positioning and my niche. And ultimately, it was just falling flat because I was sending generic messages like everyone else was. Does that make sense?
And that's basically where I was a while ago. And I actually got pretty far doing that. But it wasn't sustainable. It ran out of steam. And also just physically it's exhausting. Mentally it's exhausting. Creatively trying to start conversations with everybody every time when it's completely different. Whereas what VBM has really taught me is having just a simple focus strategy with simple templates that you can just kind of repeat and rinse over time. And obviously you customize it to each person, but just having a structure in place step by step is wildly helpful. And knowing that it actually works. And again, the most important thing, positioning yourself as somebody who can help, a partner, a strategist, not selling a product or a service.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Like the lead generation piece it's almost like the final piece of the puzzle once all the other foundations are done. And that's why we covered all the other pieces first, which were, the doctor's frame, the research process, the case study piece. You need to dial in your messaging and the other pieces first before you start trying to scale something. So this is why it's interesting when so many people come to me and they say we have a lead generation problem and have a look at it. What it actually is a positioning problem. And the first thing you absolutely have to do is speak with your customers, speak with the kind of people that you want to be attracting, and then find out what are their pains and challenges? What are the things that are keeping them up at night? Because that then becomes the foundation of your messaging, which is ultimately what makes it work.
It really makes me think about where I was about a year ago versus where I am now. A year ago, I'd build a big list, email everybody I knew, who knew, friends of friends, friends of family, all this kind of stuff. Do you need video? Do you need video? Do you need video? Do you need video? And then just following up with, hello, are you still there? You're basically just bugging people, which kind of works, but also is very exhausting and didn't really work in the long term. Versus the shift of even just starting with a niche, just the step of saying, hey, I'm an expert in your field because I've talked to lots of people in your field and I know what you need. And then as you get better and better results, you're continuously refining your messaging based on what your niche is actually saying, not what you think they need, but what they have told you they actually need. And the more you refine, the better your reply rate, right? And even, what did you say, in 1 week from 2% to 8% or something?
Exactly.
Significant increase just over a week. Versus you think about a couple of years ago, I mean, man, just like months and months and months of just like ghosting, denials, nothing. It's a step-by-step process. There's a plan, there's a structure versus just like, hello, please give me work. It's
Something
completely
interesting
different.
you said there is like the original approach you were taking was, do you need video? And that's exactly what I was doing. And I'm sure most of our listeners here have tried a similar approach. Do you need video? And therein lies the issue, which is that video is not something that is keeping people awake at night. Our ideal customers are not frustrated because they're thinking, oh, I really, really need video, but they are thinking about an underlying problem that video could be the solution for. And so, in a way, what we're doing is jumping the gun. We're taking too many steps ahead and assuming that they think they already need video. But actually, our role as video strategist is to help people identify and diagnose the actual problems that are going on in their business. And then we can prescribe video as a solution to help them solve that problem, because it's really the most powerful tool that people have available for a whole host of sales and marketing challenges. So it really begins with, people don't stay awake worrying about video, but we have to figure out what is it that they are frustrated by. What is it that they wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night as a business owner thinking, I have to get this fixed?
And I find the doctor analogy so helpful in all of these things. Like, imagine if you just walked into a doctor and you had a specific problem that you needed help with, and they were like, and they just immediately prescribed you something that you had no need for, or at least you didn't know you had need for. If you just walked in, they immediately prescribed something. That's not very helpful.
I think this is a good moment as well to bring up the elephant in the room as well, which is AI. And a lot of people are using AI now, or trying to use AI as a way to help generate leads, to run the business. And oftentimes when I ask people what research have they done, they'll say, oh yeah, AI told me this, this, and this. Or, they'll use Google, they'll build their messaging based on what AI tells them. And the issue is that AI will always resort to the average. You're not going to, just by definition, be able to get something that is outstanding or that's going to get you an 8% reply rate just based on what AI tells you. So the way I put it is like the specific language, the real problem, the insights that are going to make all the difference, they have to come from real conversations. And once you have that, then AI makes the process 10 times faster. So what we have are AI projects built around real research that we've done that then enables us to get the kind of results that we're getting, 8% response rates and closing 54K deals. That has come from putting in the foundational groundwork.
And the additional benefit to this is you're so much better positioned to then get a 54K deal. My problem in the past, do you need video? Do you need video? Do you need video? I didn't even have a niche. I had a rough niche, but some jobs were 5K, some jobs were 10K, some jobs were 1K. I had no real control because I was kind of pitching blindly to everybody. But the more you define your niche, the more you define your messaging, the more you define the problems you're solving, by the time you get on that call, you're already in a really strong position that could, they already have an understanding that, hey, this is someone who might actually be able to help me solve a real problem, rather than just, maybe I need a bit of marketing, maybe I'll put a bit of video in it.
Exactly. It's an identity shift at its core about how you see yourself and what problems you solve for a business. And then you're layering on top of that the strategy elements that make it all work. So something I think would be really interesting to get into here is more about the numbers game as well. So let's just say hypothetically you've got the positioning dialed in. Then the next piece, the next challenge is, well, how do we not get frustrated when we're not getting the results that we want? At what point do we say a campaign is not working or is working? And at what point do we scale it all up? So, I mean, Will, I know you've been going through this process over the last few months.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your take on the numbers approach before you started going through this?
Yeah, I would try a lot, it would fail, and I'd give up, and I'd get sad, and I'd wait a few months, and then maybe I'd try again. Now I've started in a certain specific niche, which was sustainable food, mainly targeting restaurants and cafes and physical spaces, and then that's shifted on to food products, so things like tea, coffee, and now I'm opening up to farms. Different messaging for each, different results for each, but exponentially rising results for each. So basically, the more I do it, the more I learn, the better I get, the better responses I get, the better deals I get. So again, it's just that process of being iterative and growing. And some weeks are good, some weeks are bad. Some calls are good, some calls are bad. But all I know is that if I just keep at it, the results just continue to get better.
I was telling you a story, I think, just earlier before we started recording, just about there was a couple of calls that I had yesterday. One was with a guy who was just very difficult to speak to and very, very reserved, wasn't, putting any of his cards on the table, and just a very challenging conversation overall. And I know that old me would have got very frustrated by that one conversation and just packed it in for the day and just thought like, right, this isn't working. And you let the emotion like overwhelm you, and you're like, right, I don't want to have to go through that again. But new me with more persistence, I was like, right, that call didn't work well. I just started picking up the phone and just calling the other people in my pipeline, and that immediately led to another deal. It was almost like karma or fate or something, just saying, right, you just had one of the worst calls of the year, and then straight after one of the best calls. But the key thing is not to get knocked down by the moments where you're sending, dozens of emails and it's not working, or LinkedIn messages, or you have a bad call, but to be able to step back and look at the numbers. Just going back to what I was saying about, like, at what point do you decide to shift gears, and at what point is it not working? Some of the key things that I'd be looking at, I mean, you've got both qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative, we're talking about how does it feel overall, like the kind of conversations that you're having with people, does it feel like they're going in the right direction? Are the responses that you're getting from people, are they overall more positive, or are they people just ignoring you or telling you to go away? You can use your intuition here to get a sense of what's working and what's not. But more useful than that with lead generation and with this process is really having a look at what's the industry average reply rate for your particular niche. And there's a really interesting piece, because a lot of people don't even know this data exists, but there's plenty of resources online. I think Instantly and Apollo and various other platforms, they share what the average reply rate is. And then you can start looking at the numbers based on that rather than just guesswork. So for example, with finance niche, the industry average reply rate was about 1.5%. Our initial baseline was about the same, about 2%, not great. And then when we were getting an 8% reply rate, we then knew that we were onto something, that the messaging was working, that our domains, our accounts, the mailboxes, everything was sending, it was delivering as it should. And we could use that as an informed decision rather than just being like, hands in the air, no idea, switching it off based on no data whatsoever. We knew that we should keep persisting with that particular approach.
That's a really interesting point, because sometimes it can feel like you're just knocking on a door that's never going to open. But if you realize the average, you might be knocking for a few weeks, and suddenly you'll get 10 responses. That's okay. But it's just having like a benchmark or a grounding point. I'll share a quick story too about confidence. And I had a few months ago, I had a call where the client actually laughed at me. They thought my offer was so ridiculous, my process was so ridiculous that they just hung up, and I could not believe it. That was probably the worst call I've ever had. And then 2 days later, I landed an 18K deal, just like that. And then a few weeks later, more again. So it's so easy to feel like things are going wrong, or things, you're not doing things right. But so often you can catch people at a funny moment, or at a wrong day, or maybe it's not the right time, or maybe you're not the right person, or maybe it's just not a good fit anyway. But what really helps is through this process, now I've got a lead list of about 100 people who I know, hey, if one of them doesn't work out, I've got 99 more to try. Whereas in the past, I'd be always emailing, outreaching, probably connecting with like one person at a time, and then they'd ghost and I'd have to go to the other person. So the amount of pressure I put on myself to say, okay, I have to get this to work because I have to pay rent. Hey, and if I get this job, then okay, great, my whole year is sorted. That's fantastic. But then what happens the next time? You have to start again, right? But again, for this process, you're building over time, and the more you build, the stronger your position gets. So it's just, much more stable position to be in.
And the key distinction there is that you are willing to sit through the discomfort of rejection, and most people just simply aren't. And the more people I speak to, the more I realize that if someone is in a place of relative comfort, that can be the biggest danger of all, because they may have big, hairy, scary goals and great ambitions, but if they're in a place of relative comfort, then they're not going to take the necessary actions. Like 95% of the time, if you're in relative comfort, it's like, okay, why should I push myself outside of my comfort zone? And that's just human nature. But what you're talking about there was interesting. You said, well, I have to pay my rent. So when something is at stake, the stakes are high here. So you're going to make it work. You're willing to sit through the challenge of rejection and no answers, and people having weird calls where people to tell you to F off. But that's the story of every good business owner, is that they've gone through the trial by fire, and they were willing to do the difficult work to get to the point where now they can, they've got all these systems in place, and it's not such a strain. So it's short-term pain for long-term gain.
Absolutely. And like, by definition, if you're trying to grow, if you're trying to do something new, it will be hard. It will be challenging. You might not have the confidence because maybe you're reaching out into something new. That's inherently going to happen. But the fact that you might have lost a bit of confidence, or this might be a bit hard, doesn't change who you are as a person. You're still a fantastically talented person. You're still the same person you are today as you were, before you tried doing these things. But now you're reaching outside yourself. You're growing. The analogy I like to think of recently is it's like, I'm into nature stuff. So it's like a crab, growing into its new shell. It has to come out of its shell first. There's this moment of vulnerability, but then you grow and harden, you get this new shell, and you're a bigger, better crab. So, and you're bigger and better and stronger forever. So that this leaning into something new is essential. And honestly, it's humanity. It's kind of adapt or die, especially these days. It sounds dramatic, but if you're not doing this stuff, you're competing with hundreds of thousands of others who are also struggling.
I want the thumbnail for this video now to be one of those little beach crabs with your face on it running sideways.
Yes, perfect.
But it's a really good analogy. And I want to take this whole thing one level deeper as well, which is that for a lot of the people listening, And I've been through this. I'm sure you've been through this, Will, but it's that belief that I'm a creative, not the kind of person that does sales or lead generation.
Hmm. No, that's a huge one for sure. I think so many of us, and there's such a, it's crazy how powerful that image is, isn't it? Of like the used car salesman or whatever. You're like, I don't want to sell, I don't want to push. Um, for me, what really helped me was understanding that I genuinely am trying to help people. And the more case studies you get, the more you realize that you actually can. We're not bothering people, we're not bugging people, we're not pushing on people. We're really helping them understand their priorities, understand their goals, and actually helping them solve those. That was a huge shift for me, and took a lot of made it much easier to make cold calls and like interrupt people's day, because I know that this could be life changing for them and their business.
What's really interesting is that all of this comes down to the identity piece and the comfort piece as well. Because this belief that, well, I'm a creative and I don't want to do sales or lead generation, what is really happening is that it's like it's a mask to be able to say that I'm comfortable doing things the way that I've always done them, and that stepping outside of my comfort zone and trying something new like this is scary. And it's that fear of not wanting to be perceived as the sleazy car salesman. But it's knowing that at the end of the day, when it's done right, that if you are able to help people on a deeper level and create greater impact in the world using your skills as a video creator, then that's the ultimate goal for almost everyone. I'm sure everyone listening has a dream to be able to really make an impact and help transform businesses using the power of video. But the piece in the middle that's holding everyone back is that belief around what I should and shouldn't do as a creative person. And I think, Will, you're a great example of someone who's just, you pushed through this over the last few months, going from cinematographer through to video strategist. I'm curious, are there any other things that you'd share with people listening that were sort of pivotal when it came to making this shift?
Yeah, I'd say it was a challenge at first. I had a really strong why. I moved back to the UK and I have this cottage which is lovely, but it's falling down. So I have this like very tangible everyday need to, you know, to improve my life and financially and many other ways. So I knew I needed to do something different, because just pitching as a DP wasn't really helping me, especially the industry that I tend to be in, documentary. It's pretty hard to get by on that, even in the best of times. And so shifting to the strategist position, I remember there was a moment I changed my LinkedIn photo from me holding a giant camera in the wild to me just, being open and smiley, and approachable. And changing it from National Geographic to cinematographer to video strategist who helps food companies overachieve, X problem. That was a big identity challenge for me. But as the clients started coming in, as the projects started coming in, as I started, traveling to India for big documentary shoots, going to France, going to Scotland, all these big adventure projects that could have been, that were bigger and better than even some of the National Geographic projects I worked on. I'm realizing the potential and the satisfaction that these are things that I am able to land. I don't have to rely on Nat Geo or some other distributor or organization to provide for me. I can now create my own opportunities, and they're just getting better and better.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Again, going back to short-term pain for long-term gain, it's really about unlocking this piece that ultimately gives you more creative freedom. And when you're running your own business, a business that's running effectively, then you have all the options in front of you. You can choose which projects to work on, which clients to take, what areas to focus on next. And that's the beauty of it when it's done right. But the sad truth is that so many people get stuck in the old way of doing things, and they're either unwilling to take the uncomfortable steps to improve, or they just don't have the strategy and they don't know what steps they should take.
Yeah, and something else that really helped me is just how much longer are you going to live like this? How much longer are you going to go gig to gig, project to project, good client, bad client, clients leaving, child world changing. It's an unstable position. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm 39 now, but I'm done. I'm done being unstable. I want to be building my fortress. I don't want to be living in my straw house anymore.
I mean, so I'm imagining you right now. You have a straw house on the cottage that you're that you're living in, just waiting to
I
repair
do
it.
have a tent. There's a sauna actually, so I'm actually quite happy living in the straw in the outdoors. But that's not good. I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about being able to provide for my wife and everything else. Again, it's one thing getting by and surviving for yourself, but to be able to truly build a profitable business, you can help yourself, you can help others, you can help your family members, you can get through the COVIDs, the illnesses, the challenges, the deaths, all these things that happen. Just these things that happen in life. We so often focus on just getting to the next paycheck that we forget that around the corner there's much bigger challenges. And would you rather be in a fortress or would you rather be in a straw house? And this is a way. This is a very good way of putting bricks into that fortress.
Yeah, well said. It's all about resilience, isn't it? And if you're just dependent on referrals and word of mouth, you don't have any systems in place in your business, then that's the straw house that could fall down as soon as the phone stops ringing. But when you start to take control of how you attract clients, getting meetings booked into your calendar, and you take ownership of this piece, then that's how you build the fortress that will take you through the next pandemic or the next recession. Well, the recession that we're in at the moment,
Yes.
things will get tougher. So referrals will dry up if they haven't already. So if you're listening to this, this is what you need to be focusing on. So with that in mind, I said at the beginning, we'd share the exact steps that you can be taking to get your foot in the door with this and start getting results. Let's just dive straight into that. And the very first thing you need to do, and this is all in the 8 frameworks guide, which I'll leave linked below. But the very first thing you need to do is have total clarity on your niche. So not overthinking it. Don't spend ages trying to figure out, which niche is going to be the perfect one, because there isn't. And this isn't about redefining your entire business and only focusing on that niche for the rest of your life. This is about thinking, which campaign are you going to focus on now to get some traction, to get some cash flow coming in? Also to demonstrate that all of this is working, because it's important as well that you get that dopamine hit early on and getting results. So I'd suggest, if this is your first time going through it, pick something where you're going to be able to get results faster. So second key piece then is you need to build a targeted list. So we're not saying go out and just scrape it all automatically with AI or Google or any of the tools out there. The first thing you want to do with this is build the list manually yourself. So 20 to 50 ideal prospects in a spreadsheet with a little bit of information about each of them. You want to be able to see, how are they currently marketing themselves? What sort of language are they using? And actually going out and searching these websites yourself, because it's the neurons in your brain that need to start connecting the dots to see, right, are these the types of companies that I want to work for or work with or not? And AI can't make that decision for you. Then the second piece to this is to research them individually. Now, there's 2 levels to that. One is looking at their website, their LinkedIn, and keep adding to your spreadsheet, like add notes about, again, how are they marketing themselves, like what kind of language are they using, any like noteworthy pieces. You want to build up that database. But then the second level to this is to go and actually speak to people, your ideal potential customers. And you can go back to some of the earlier podcasts that we did on this particular topic. But as we've talked about here, you need to go and have first-hand conversations. Because if you just rely on AI and Google and the same tools that everyone else is using, you're going to get the same results that the average person gets, which is not a sustainable, profitable, or healthy business. Then the next piece here, the fourth piece, is to write to one problem. So you want to identify, what is the biggest problem? What's the main challenge that's keeping people awake tonight? And build your messaging around that. We want to be thinking about, Is it a sales or marketing or hiring problem? But beyond that, what kind of language are they using to describe these challenges? Then fifth is you want to build a sequence around this and not just spray and pray. So a targeted sequence, and you want to be doing around 7 to 10 touch points. I mean, minimum. And this is another place that most people slip up, is that they'll do 2 or 3 steps. They might send 1 message or 2, and then it falls flat. What we find, which is really interesting, is that most of our responses come from the 3rd or 4th message. The first message gets one of the lowest response rates, which is interesting because that's where most people give up. The highest frequency comes from the 3rd and 4th, and then we still get responses from the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th message. So don't keep a super short campaign or super short sequence worrying that it's going to bother people. When you have good messaging that is personalized and doesn't feel spammy because you've done your research, you're then able to send more messages. And the key thing is that when you're dealing with CEOs and founders and busy business owners, they're busy, right? They're very unlikely to respond to the first message. I even have this as like a principle, which is that if someone is emailing me about something, a service that they want to sell, I'll never respond to the first message. I will only look at the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th message, because at that point I know they're serious and they're genuinely interested in working with me, rather than someone who's just taking a shot in the dark and sending a message out of the blue. And then the 6th piece is to track what lands. So again, going back to your spreadsheet, it's a little bit manual, a little bit more time consuming at first, but keep track of how many times you've messaged each person, and then I just use a simple color scoring method, which like green, orange, red, and just keep track of who's responding positively and who's moving along, and then who's said no. And if they say no, that's fine. You don't contact them again. But until someone has said no, it's not a no. Okay, so those 6 steps there, pretty simple, but this is just the foundation of dialing in your outreach before you start scaling it up. Because once you get this piece right, again, you don't want to pour fuel on a fire that isn't working. Yeah, we don't want to do more of something that's broken. We have to get this bit right first by doing it manually before we then start doing it at scale.
That's I love all of that, and that's been absolutely life-changing for me. For me, I found out with restaurants, bums on seats, that was number one. That was number one problem. So you just learn all these crazy phrases. Another really good point was, it's not a no until they say no. Don't give up. People are busy. They may love to work with you. It could be a fantastic relationship. So just keep at it. And the last thing I'll say is, this can sound a bit technical and a bit different and a bit new if you're used to running around and doing all kinds of exciting things you grew up doing, or what you love to do as a filmmaker, whatever. But within a week or two, you'll have this in place, and then the rest of your life will be different. Like this can create significant change. So give it a go.
It's all there in the 8 frameworks document as well. And you're free to join the community that we've got going too, so you can ask questions about this. But the key thing here is that everyone's always looking for a quick fix. They're looking for the next tactic or tool that's going to solve this problem for them. But the key distinction, if you take anything away from all of this, is that it's all about putting your customer first. It's not about going in and saying, hey, we're amazing. This is what we do. Do you need video? It's really about taking the time to sit down with your ideal customers, understand what it is that makes them tick, and then creating customer-focused messaging and building your brand, building your business around them, not around you. When you do that, it just unlocks so much potential for your business. That's the key to effective lead generation. That's the key to making outbound work. Until you've done these things, you'll always struggle. It will always be an uphill battle. So take the time, reset, consider everything that we talked about here, and then let us know how you get on. All right, thanks for listening, and I hope you found the insights and takeaways from this valuable. We'd love to know what you think. Just let us know in the comments below. Any questions you've got helps us inform future content. And all of these episodes relate back to one of the key points from the 8 frameworks for highly successful video agencies that I put together, and that's linked right below in the description. So go check that out. You can download it for free, and it gives you the steps and examples and guidance on how to implement these things in your business. We'll see you next time.